This is the Federal Mobility Policy Update for January 11th, 2021. Our guests are Beth Osborn from Transportation for America and Richard Ezike from the Urban Institute. As the transit crisis deepens, what did December's COVID-19 relief bill do for transit? Also, what is likely to be Pete Buttigieg's agenda at the U.S. Department of Transportation? And with Democrats controlling both houses of Congress, what does it mean for the future of transportation? All that and more on this edition of the Federal Mobility Policy Update. Welcome to another edition of the Federal Mobility Policy Update. This week we've got so much to report because so much has happened since the holiday break. Let's kick it off with our panelists. Let's start with our perennial panelist and wisdom expert, Beth Osborne.
I want that on my cards from now on. Hi. Yeah, it's been a really exciting couple of days here. We finally got, right before the holidays, a relief bill through that included a little less than half of the amount of money transit agencies need to keep operating through the pandemic. But the good news is there now appears to be opportunity to come back in the very near future and plus that up to what transit agencies need to get through the end of the year. We also have seen a big appointment for Secretary of Transportation. And the news out of Georgia yesterday means that getting other appointments, the Secretary Designate confirmed and all of the other appointees confirmed at DOT and throughout the agencies significantly easier. So I think we're going to see a much smoother transition than people were predicting last week. And I'm going to turn things over to Richard.
Great. My name is Richard Ziki at the Urban Institute, and I'm glad to be here at this podcast. And I think for me, it's just, I echo Beth's comments on our new nominee for Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I think he has a lot of great ideas. I actually listened to him on an interview with MSNBC, and what he said really stood out to me about how he plans to make equity a priority in our. Excuse me. Sorry. How he makes.
Okay.
Yeah, how he makes.
You're an important person. You're always getting calls.
Yeah, something make calls. Like, what? Okay. So I think what I was saying about Buttigieg, the interview that he did with MSNBC, he talked about making equity a priority in the work of the DOT, and I think this is very, very important. And it's great to see that he's going to do that. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for the DOT to lead that effort and pass that initiatives on to the state and local agencies. And secondly, I was going to talk about the impacts of technology. We see that the impacts of transportation on the environment are very profound. It's the largest generator. It's the sector with the largest generator of greenhouse gases. So, both Biden and his proposals have talked about really increasing the number of electric vehicles and the infrastructure within the country, and to help reduce emissions as well. So, I really am interested to see kind of how that develops over the next few years with the administration. And then also looking at just focus on equity, going back to what people were just saying, and the justice aspect. How do we ensure that our transportation system provides accessible and affordable ways to get around for all people, no matter what you look like or where you live? And I'm really excited to see how the new administration approaches that question. I mean, it's a topic that we've talked about within the transportation world quite a bit, and I think we can see some real movements going forward with the change in administration. So
great.
I'll turn it over to Martha.
Martha Ruskowski with the Mobility and Access Funders Collaborative, and Daryl's co-host on this. I am pretty excited about having a Senate that might actually be supportive of a transportation, a more transformative transportation bill, given that, we're going to reauthorize the big bill theoretically in next October. I don't think that's a slam dunk, that we're guaranteed something really innovative, but I think we have a lot better chance now than we did last week.
That's great. Let's unpack all of that. So much to unpack. We'll start with the transition, with the Biden administration announcing that Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, former mayor, someone who is familiar with transportation from a local level, as the new transportation secretary. And what's most interesting is that he has been tweeting, using social media to talk about an agenda which is so much more than just building roads, and including equity and inclusiveness. We'll start with you, Beth. What is your take? You've been inside at DOT, and now you're the director of Transportation for America. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm very excited about Pete Buttigieg's Secretary of Transportation. He is not only engaged on transportation and alternative forms of transportation, but he is also a huge supporter of connecting housing and transportation issues. So as mayor, he reduced parking minimums, recognizing that that impacts travel. He allowed ADUs, like granny flats and apartments connected to homes to go forward, which allows for more density. And then it makes things like walking, biking, and transit more effective, a way to get around and moving retail to that area. So he kind of sees the whole picture as a mayor, and he's been very active on these issues and bringing them together. And I think that can only portend good things in terms of better transportation policy, but also in terms of coordinated policy with the other agencies that have such a profound impact on transportation, like HUD and EPA and USDA and the others. So yeah, I'm super excited, and I'm very, very excited about his focus on equity. We put out a proposal right before the holidays calling for a lot of the things he's talking about, and particularly a program to take down highways that have destroyed or divided Black and Brown communities, and to do so in a way that makes sure that those that are still in those communities are able to participate in the benefit of that improvement. So we're looking forward to coordinating with him, and we're also very excited that he's likely to be able to get his team through and get nominations through so that they can get right to work.
Mm-hmm. And a reason I'm kind of excited about Mayor Pete is that, like, he's a celebrity, right? He's kind of got some star power. He's got some attention, and transportation is usually sort of like, bottom of the barrel. We don't often get, people with real name recognition and, charisma. So I think that too bodes well for the work and our ability to shine a spotlight on, this behemoth thing in our society, right? Transportation that people just sort of take for granted or ignore a lot of the time.
Well, and Martha, what he's really good at is understanding some of the technical underpinnings that might send us in the wrong direction or cause complications, and communicating it to people that don't think about those technical issues very much. And that's going to be key to making changes on the inside.
Yes.
I like the notion that you don't have to explain who he is, right? Before, with other secretaries, like, who is that? It's like, no, it's Pete Buttigieg. What? Okay, I'm going to listen to him, right? So, Richard, I interrupted you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, everything, it was great that you bring that up. He's got star power. He's got impact. He's a numbers guy. He's done a lot of work at, as mayor of South Bend too. And I think at the local level, as a mayor, you really understand transportation, because that's where you see the actual impacts happening, right? And I think he's a very innovative leader, and I think that's what the transportation needs, is somebody who can think big picture, who can think into the future, who can see the trends coming and be able to navigate around them. When interestingly, I had a chance to look at when he was a nominee, looked at his infrastructure plan, and he's all about, investing. I think his plan was about $1 trillion in investment and focusing on improving capital programs and improving electric vehicle infrastructure to reduce emissions, to get focused on maintenance and building back our infrastructure to a state of repair so that people can move around safely and effectively. He really gets it. And as Beth said, he's going to put a team together I think is going to be approved and get through our Senate and really make infrastructure a top priority, which Biden has many times mentioned in his speeches. So I think he's going to be able to be, one of the cabinet members that really makes an impact over the next 4 years. And with this focus on equity and being able, his ability to listen to people of different backgrounds and different insights, he's going to be able to get a lot done. So I'm really excited for his tenure.
That's great. Let's just slightly unpack. Everyone's mentioned he's going to have a good team around him. Beth, you've been on the inside as part of a team. What does it take for him to be able to assemble the right team? If you were to counsel him on what kind of team do you want, given that now this is the federal government, this is not City Hall, what kind of team does he need to assemble?
Yeah, I think he needs a team that has an understanding of how projects are put together and chosen at the state and local level, and how federal funding and direction impacts that decision making. It's a rare skill to have, frankly, because you tend to have people that understand the on the ground side, but don't quite understand the interplay between the feds and the funded community, or you have federal policy people that have not really seen projects be developed. And so they don't see the impact of what they write, or more likely the lack of impact of what they write on the decisions made on the ground. So I think looking for folks that understand it from both sides and how to put it together is important. And also people that recognize that after 70 years of no updating of the program, there's tons to be done within executive authority, and they're willing to roll up their sleeves and really revisit the old regulations, guidances, the general relationships between the feds and the grantees. That's going to be super important. Just talking in the policy clouds and thinking only about legislation is leaving a ton of the barriers untouched.
Like the 80-20 split.
Like the 80-20 split, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like what I've seen from FHWA and USDOT has been kind of a reluctance to be directive with the states. There's a lot of flexibility in the money. There's a lot of way of do things, and a real hesitancy. One of my things has been, bike infrastructure, say. There's been a real hesitancy to say, here's how you should do it. Instead, it's like, oh, and here's 10 different ways you could do it. Do you see any potential for changing that so that we actually, is that a lever for getting better outcomes at state and local levels?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you from our interactions with engineers that the message they get is, if you follow the traditional design standards and rules, your project will happen quickly. But if you try to adjust it, that you will be stymied, because you have to get all kinds of design exceptions, which can take 18 to 24 months. And especially for a small project, you've now just blown everything up. And, because we just offer best practices in lots of different ways you might attack a complete street, what you're basically saying is, here's a relatively clear way to go forward in the traditional path, or here's a bunch of ideas so you can make it up. And what engineer says, I'm going to choose the path where I make it up from scratch every single time? That's foolish. And so we need something that is more objective and clear and true guidance for complete streets and bike bed, as we have for every other type of transportation project, and
Right.
Stop acting like it's just a mode of tossing suggestions to engineers to let them figure it out project by project.
And those design guides need to happen at a faster pace. They come out like, what's the MCU CTD comes out every 13 years or something. That's why the NACDA design guides came ahead with their proposal so quickly. So it would be interesting to say, here are the NACDA design guides, implement them in the next 4 years, require that give them permission. I know Ray LaHood said these are acceptable, but further carry that out. So.
Agree.
Yeah, and I will say that there's an open rulemaking right now on the MUTCD, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So this is the type of paint you use, the reflectivity of signs, and it has some information about signals and things like that. There's a bunch of stuff in there when you should do a crossing. So there's an opportunity to speak up now about what in the current draft of the MUTCD makes sense and what doesn't. And there's also a rulemaking on adopting the design standards. And one of the things I would very much like to see is a clear message to engineers that you cannot rely on the Green Book, which is the nickname for the design guide typically adopted by US DOT and created by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, that says if you use a design that is known to be unsafe, it doesn't matter if it's in the Green Book, you are not protected from liability.
Yeah.
And really start to force people to use true engineering judgment and not just rely on a book that is not compiled in a scientific manner.
No autopilot design. Yeah, I think that those are all good things for Pete to take away, and hopefully he has the team around him that in fact will be able to understand that and help him implement. He will do a great job selling an agenda. I think he needs a strong set of people around him, helping behind the scenes and moving the bureaucracy that is US DOT.
Yep. So really exciting. And I know we'll all be watching carefully to see what he does. You know, does he move quickly? Does he assemble a team? Do we see real, stuff coming out of the administration?
I will remind folks that it's unclear his role in picking his team. There is always a bit of a dance between the White House and the Secretary Designate, and we don't know how strong a role the White House is playing here and how much he has a free hand. And even when things move fast in putting together a team, fast, it's not so fast. So right. I actually think this team's going to move faster than most. But, when I was at DOT in 2009, we finally had our full team probably by October or November of 2009. So,
wow. Yeah, we got 2 years, right? Before another election. We got to move, right? I'm just impatient.
Yeah. So, I will say this in terms of the question regarding his team. I said a lot of his, in a lot of his infrastructure plans, he really talks about this interplay between the needs of urban communities and needs of rural communities. We live in a very, we have to understand the politics, and he understands it as well. We live in a very polarized world. We need to make sure that the projects that we develop are tailored to both the needs of those who live in our rural areas and also those who live in our urbanized areas. And this can be completely different. But as you said, he's a very sharp person. He's got a very bright mind. I think he's going to put together a team, as y'all said, is going to help him to make decisions that help build their infrastructure out for the next 10, 20, 30 years and beyond. And I think he's also going to understand that there's a little political dance behind it. And but I think he's aware of that. And I think he's going to have the people around him that are going to be able to really help him to navigate those issues and really build infrastructure out, because I think it's going to be on the top of the minds of the Biden administration going into 2021. I mean, we've been talking about infrastructure. We've been talking about it when Trump was elected, and the plans that were put out back then. Of course, those got deadpan quite a bit because of the heavy emphasis on the P3s. But I think now moving into 2021, the understanding that with COVID has really decimated a lot of our economy, and the really way to build that up is to build our infrastructure. It was the backbone that allowed America to become the economic power that it is today. It's time for us to look back on how we can really make infrastructure a top priority. And I think for him being in that position as Secretary of Transportation, he's going to have a major role to play in really building back the economy post-pandemic. So he's going to be in the forefront. I really think.
Yeah, that's exciting. Okay, so let's transition to the other big news, which is Senate. We got 2 new senators, Democrats from Georgia. So Democrats now have a very narrow majority, but ability to move some stuff through the Senate. And it seems like Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff are both kind of transportation guys, which makes me really excited. So let's talk about our 2 new senators briefly. Beth?
Yeah, they both have talked a lot about transportation, and they have a lot of space on their web pages about it, which that made it not sound like much, but you often do not find a lot on transportation within campaigns. It's one of those issues that they give some lip service to, but they don't get into any detail. Senator-elect Warnock definitely had a lot to say. and starts off with, repairing our crumbling roads and bridges, and investing in aging infrastructure, but, really specifically talks about reducing traffic pollution by investing and expanding public transportation, and in building multimodal networks, and in increasing funding for developments in underserved areas and things like that. It's not the typical, we just need to try to build our way out of traffic congestion sort of thing. And if any city is experiencing traffic congestion, it is Atlanta. So it would be an obvious move, but he does not talk about that. Senator-elect Ossoff talks specifically about, or in his history, his parents were very involved in stopping a highway that was going to go through an Olmsted Park in Atlanta. So he also has come from a world that recognizes that there are trade-offs when you're building infrastructure, and there's more than just transportation speed at stake here, and we need to think about them against each other. So I think we have two potential allies in updating the program. And I'll also say, with their election, and some of the turnover in the Senate, we're likely looking at Senator Carper as the chair of Environment and Public Works. I fully admit I am a total Carper partisan as a former staffer and member of Carpertown. But also his new ranking member, Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, has been a strong supporter of bike ped safety, has worked with Senator Cardin of Maryland a lot on those issues, and a huge rail fan. So I think that they might be a little closer together and able to work together more, therefore giving opportunities for the Warnocks and the Ossoffs of the world to really, find a place to work in this bill.
So looking at the reauthorization process, likely the House will start from the bill that they already drafted. Is that true? But the Senate will probably start from scratch, come up with something new? Because the House bill was pretty good, right? There were some exciting things in the House bill, not complete transformation, but, definitely a lot of good things in that. The Senate bill, not so exciting. What's the likely process around that?
I don't know the process in the Senate. I dearly hope they start over.
Yeah.
Me too.
But I am not sure that they will.
You think they'll just take what's on the shelf from the House and just go with it?
No, I think that they will take what they have from the last Congress and amend it. I really hope that they don't. But I fear that, look, the Senate is they're slower moving. They're more deliberate is the term they use. It's kind of in keeping with the culture to say, well, we had an agreement last Congress. Let's start from there. I think that puts Senator Carper and anyone seeking real change at a huge disadvantage, because you're justifying your way out of an agreed to package as opposed to starting over. Yeah. But I don't know what they're going to do. I strongly recommend starting over.
I think the political shift that has happened in the Senate is going to, I think, give them a bit more impetus to do that, right? I mean, when, Biden has been very vocal about clean energy, clean transportation, clean jobs, both Warnock and Ossoff. More so Warnock has really talked about that. So very extensively in his speeches. And so I would like to think, especially with the House bill that had a lot of really great things about it, especially on the climate side. I think there's an opportunity to where the Senate can, although it may take a little bit longer. I know Biden said he's going to try to push for some type of bill by February, if I remember correctly, but something that really is really focuses on the issues that he campaigned on. And we have to be optimistic. And of course, you're going to see a lot of a push from the grassroots community to really push the Senate in this direction that really focuses on the infrastructure bill being something that supports jobs, that supports a push toward tackling climate change. The tenor has changed in politics with the Warnock and Ossoff's election, and so I think at least from the pressure from the bottom up, you're going to see some early push for an infrastructure bill that I think is going to be quite different than what the last Congress had, but also is very similar and takes a lot of the things that the House bill had.
I mean, it feels like, you mentioned Capitol. I think that there are a set number of Republicans who are not adverse to more infrastructure. The fact that the most recent COVID relief bill had money for transit, to me, was a marker that maybe there's an opportunity for a conversation around more money for transit and other things as well. And I think as the electorate gets younger, they're open to other forms of transportation other than just cars, so it feels like it could be a good way. Can I ask a little bit about the new House? There are new members of the House. I noticed that Jake Auchincloss, who is from Boston, has joined the Future Mobility Caucus, has specifically been using his social platforms to talk about what he hopes to do, looking at other forms of mobility other than just cars. Any reaction from the panel on that?
I just love new people who come in with new energy and new ideas. And I think every movement and every caucus and every group desperately needs them to keep their group living and breathing. And to have someone come in so focused on transportation is really unusual. And so I haven't had a chance to work with them. I can't wait to do so and hear more about those ideas and really, offer to help to flesh them out and turn them into legislation where appropriate. It's a really exciting development.
Yeah. Representative Auchincloss, joining Representative Ayanna Pressley, Representative Chuy Garcia from Chicago. We've got some people in there who are, who really get it from an equity perspective, from a climate perspective, from a mobility and opportunity perspective. It's exciting to see those voices in the mix now.
Yeah, I'm personally, really excited about, this new Congress and the push to really focus on really improving our infrastructure that is focused on, green, clean transportation, impact, reducing impacts on climate change, and really focusing on equity. I know it's something, as you mentioned, Martha, with Ayanna Pressley, she has spoken quite a lot about, making sure that our transportation system provides access for everybody. And she's part of the Transportation Equity Caucus, I believe, or one of those caucuses that really focuses on that. And I'm hoping, and I believe with this new energy coming in, we're really going to see some movement forward on that.
Well, and all this work requires that activists on the ground need to be connected. I think, the opportunity, and Beth, you've been a great conduit, Richard, you've been researching and providing the information to audiences on the ground and hopefully to foundations who are going to support those audiences. But now I see an opportunity, and Beth, you've already laid some of those seeds, to further strengthen the relationship between grassroots groups who are dealing day in, day out with the challenges that they face locally, and then how that rolls up into a federal policy agenda.
That's exactly right. We need those local advocates who are translating the policies into what it means in that member's home state or home district, because they are moved more by what it's going to mean on the ground than what it's going to mean theoretically. And so those advocates who can explain, for example, why more funding to help transit get through the COVID crisis, or changing the 80-20 split to 50-50 and what that means in terms of the things that will get done, that's what's going to motivate folks. I will say that we have a unique opportunity now to support some research groups and national groups to really explain and talk about some of the issues of the day that we haven't necessarily focused on in the past. And one of the things we've been thinking of after my boss, Calvin Gladney, tweeted out our proposal to replace or take down urban renewal highways that destroyed Black and brown neighborhoods. He got over 300 responses with examples of neighborhoods that were hit. There's an opportunity for someone to map that. I'd love to be the organization that did it, but to map it out and allow people to interact and see what these neighborhoods looked like before and after, to learn the story in their backyard about it, and to talk about how that history affects us today. And then that information aggregated on the national perspective could then be utilized by those local advocates. We need to keep putting out content and explaining why this change is necessary.
That totally makes sense. You know, go ahead, Martha.
No, you go.
Beth, you remind me that there's an opportunity to learn about all of this. The cool kids, the transportation nerds, the policy people who are regularly meeting, normally there's like 4,000 of them that meet for what's called the Transportation Research Board annual meeting. This year it's all virtual, and usually the best part of that meeting is the Saturday before that meeting in a thing that you helped to run, Beth, called Transportation Camp. It's like, okay, campers, and it's a free-form conversation of ideas. It's not formal. There aren't horrible PowerPoints. There's an endless series of poster sessions. It's just where people really get to hear each other and learn about what's going on. Beth, why don't you just talk a little bit about that? And it's coming up it's coming up on the 16th.
On the 16th, a week from this Saturday.
Yeah.
We are, in fact, if you're interested in attending, I'll make sure Daryl has it to post it, the link to register, which is dirt cheap because we're not
It's
meeting
$10. It's $10.
You have no excuse. But there's a deadline to offering your session idea. This is an unconference. People show up with session ideas, and we try very hard to take all of them, but we often don't get to take every single one. And we schedule them throughout the day, and we make that schedule available, and then people can choose which ones they're most interested in. We're going to have that. We're going to have 8 different channels for people to tune into over blocks of time between 10 a.m. on the 16th and I think it's 4 p.m. So some of our sponsors will have special panels, kind of highlighted panels, but otherwise anybody who has an idea, maybe it's a study that was just released, or something going on in their hometown, or a project that was particularly exciting, or something we learned through COVID, can pitch their session. And I think you just have to turn it in the day before, and then we will go ahead and keep the unconference vibe and throw it together in the morning and put it out. And then people just get together and they interact, and it can be a presentation. It can be a discussion. It can be an interactive session. People come in with all kinds of great ideas, and it is super duper fun. And we've heard great stories about successes of virtual transportation camps in New York and Pittsburgh and elsewhere. So we've learned from those who pioneered it, and we think it will just be fantastic.
If you're a student,
on what we might want to do for this one. Last year, Daryl and I, we did a cage match between Team Electrification and Team VMT, and it was raucous and fun. And actually, I think started a lot of really great conversations and made some new connections. And Daryl will never forgive me for it.
No, it was fun. I got to meet some really interesting people.
We also had one session where they did an Iowa caucus style debate over where to invest money in transportation. And there were people that were in corners of the room, talking about more money for transit, and then someone over for bike ped and different things like that. And they had to argue, and then we took a vote, and then someone got basically kicked out, and then those people had to repopulate. It was a blast. Can't do quite as much of that. Cage matches will be very hard virtually. But the point is, be as creative as you can be.
Yeah. And if you're a student, it's only $5. I think a Big Mac costs more than registration. So
yeah, no excuses.
Yeah, no excuses. All right. Well, unfortunately, we have to leave. We have no excuses for not saving your time as the audience. So let's end as we normally do with a provocative question. I am going to start with asking you, normally, what is your moment of Zen? What is your moment of the opposite of Zen? Excitement, fear. What is the opposite of Zen right now that you're feeling around transportation? Who wants to start?
Opposite of Zen. I'm just going to go positive. I am really excited about the opportunity to raise climate and equity in the transportation system space. And I think that the stars are aligning that really will force that conversation in a way that's going to make some people very uncomfortable. What I really hope is that we are able, this is the fear side, the other side of excitement is often nervousness and fear, is that those who want to see this happen think that in major societal change, you can engage for a few months or a year and make it happen. And, we may or may not have a great victory this time, but the way you change society is not to say, well, I lost this time, I quit, which is what the funding community did after MAP 21. But to say, well, we're going to learn, we're going to regroup, and we're going to go harder. So I hope that this is the beginning of a long-term effort to update and transform the transportation system.
Yeah, that's great. It's like what happened in Georgia. It took 10 years to get stuff done. Hopefully we can have that or make that in only 2 years. So it's taking the Stacey Abrams lessons and applying that to transportation reform. Yeah. So Richard, what are you the opposite of Zen about right now?
That's a good question. I would say for me, I think kind of a little bit alluding to what Beth said just earlier. Like the idea of transformation takes time, right? And it's so easy to be discouraged if that doesn't happen as quickly as you like. I mean, we know in the grassroots community, they want change very quickly. And it's because of that push, it makes the people who are in charge uncomfortable and say, okay, we need to start doing that. But also at times, we know politics can be very, very political, very challenging. It can be very cutthroat. It can be very difficult. And and a lot of times people who want to see change don't see it happen very quickly, they can get discouraged. And so, there's a lot of excitement around, Biden's new plans. There's a lot of excitement about Pete. I hope we don't get into that same rut where that excitement, is high, and then because you run into the bureaucracy of the federal government, the bureaucracy of history of our country, we all know what it is like. That starts to discourage change. But I'm hopeful.
Keep going on. Don't let bureaucracy slow you down.
Exactly.
Never-ending constant pressure. Yeah. Exactly,
because I think with that, you're going to really see that change. And I think right now it's a different time. It's different. The vibe is different. I mean, we've had Black Lives Matter. We've had so many of these issues that have been unfortunately put to the back burner now come up and start to affect conversations about every topic, and especially infrastructure. So I really see that moving forward, and I'm really excited for that.
Yep. We just need a bus rapid transit system of performance. In terms of just advancing our agenda on a bus rapid transit lane. Martha, what is your anti-moment of Zen or the opposite of moment of Zen? And then we'll close it out.
So I'm pretty excited about, there's just a lot of potential right now. I feel this sort of urgency and anxiety that we're not ready for it, that we're not organized enough. We have not been investing enough in building the grassroots muscle and, ready to take advantage of this opportunity. But there's a lot we can do, even given that. And I hope we use this as an opportunity to take advantage of short-term opportunities, but also, like Beth says and Richard says, think about the long game.
That's great. That's a good way to end it. And I'll just close with my moment of anti-Zen is intensity. I think we need to have the intensity of 1,000 suns in illuminating where the darkness is and bringing back a better transportation system for us all. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you soon. If you like this in the YouTube channel, we'll put this in the show notes. Transportation Camp. We hope to see you there, campers. And thank you for participating. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.